All right, Robert, thanks for coming. Excited to talk to you about this article and about your experience. I know we've worked together for what feels like 4 years, maybe even more now. And I know that you've done some great stuff. So I guess just introduce yourself, kind of let us know your company name, your market, the size, and who your target client is.
Sure. So my name is Robert Dell'Osso. I'm president and the owner of MasterKey Property Management. We're out of the Raleigh, North Carolina area. They call it the Triangle. So it encompasses a few different counties, Wake, Durham, parts of Durham County and parts of Johnston County and some of our other surrounding areas as it grows. We do single family residential management. We don't do any big apartments. We'll do triplexes, fourplexes, nothing that would require an on-site manager. So we manage around 450 homes right now.
Great.
Most of our clients have 1 to 2 properties. It's a mix of people trying to be investors, some accidental landlords, as they call them, and some, true investors. We have some clients with 14 or 15 houses. So we have a kind of a diverse mix. So
That's amazing.
no Airbnbs, no short terms or vacation rentals, anything like that.
All long term, small multi and single, which makes sense. I know enough about the Raleigh area that is probably the most significant inventory for sure. And how long you been in business?
We started in 2016, so
Okay.
about 8 years.
Great. And has this always been a full-time endeavor for you, or did you start kind of
No,
part-time and then move into
it hasn't really. I mean, I grew up in the industry. My parents and family have had rental properties. My dad and his brother and my grandparents had a couple of small apartment buildings back in Texas. So I was always involved in it. Went the route, after high school, college, got a job in the corporate world, which brought me to North Carolina. A few years after that, I bought my first rental because I wanted to get into the business myself. And as you know, buying rentals is expensive, right? They want 20 to 25% down. So
Sure.
after I got a few of them, 3 or 4 of them, I decided, how am I going to keep making more money off of this, right? Like, it's great to own them, but it's kind of hard. I wasn't really willing to take the risk at the time to go leverage the heck out of myself and get crazy loans like pre-2008. Maybe I should have, I don't know. So something I just
you
kind
may
of
have dodged a bullet there, actually.
right. There is one neighborhood where I do say I wish I'd have bought like 2 dozen of them in there, because I'd be probably grossing around 50 grand a month, and just that's what I would be doing at this point.
None
But
of us have that
it's
crystal
hard
ball.
to predict that, right?
I would say none of us have that crystal ball, right?
So eventually I just decided, I think I can manage. I'm pretty good at this. I can manage it for other people. So I went and got my broker's license. In North Carolina, you have to be a licensed broker to do property management. There's no other specific property manager license, just a broker's license. So I did that, did the class on weekends, and then set up the company from scratch with no properties except for the 3 or 4 or 5 of my own that I was managing. And started treating those like managed properties for someone else.
Got it. That very common story. Start with your own inventory, then going out. So what year? So that was 2016. Is that what you said?
Yep.
Okay. And then what's the size of the company now? Not just the door count, but I mean, what's the head count look like? What's the structure look like? What kind of operation is it now?
Sure. So you got me. I've got 2 assistant property managers that are local and in the field, running around managing turnovers, move in, move outs. I've got 2 remote team members. They're both located down in Bolivia. One of them answers the phones between normal business hours. She also helps draft the leases. Our leases are all templates, so they're all just plug and play. Tenant notifications, a lot of communications with tenants, like notifying them of HOA updates and stuff like that. Another remote team member, she's managing our lease renewal process, which includes doing a periodic inspection through inspection service we use. She manages our maintenance requests, that kind of thing as well.
Great.
And then I do have, of course, we have a separate company I did set up just for liability purposes. We have a W-2 on-staff handyman. He handles the bulk of our just general handyman stuff. And then we have our business development manager that you're well aware of. And she's
Yep.
been around for about 4 years.
Great. Glad to hear she's still there and doing well.
Yep.
Amazing. Okay. So fairly lean company, but a sizable operation compared to I think a lot of people that might be reading this. And I just kind of wanted to picture that, 450 units. What does that look like today for you? All right. So let's write that letter to yourself from the future. What would you tell yourself if it was, 2016 or even 2018, and you were basically, other than buying all of those units in that one neighborhood that you talked about, can't do that. What would you tell yourself about the business that you just kind of maybe wish you knew or learned the hard way, or maybe just had to relearn multiple times? I know as a business owner, some of the best lessons are just lessons I have to keep relearning as I go through it, usually involving people. So kind of walk me through, what are the things that you want to tell yourself 8 years ago?
And this is applicable to not just people starting a property management company, but even any small business. Like, don't try to do everything yourself. I was trying to do the bookkeeping myself. I was trying to go fix stuff myself because I didn't have those relationships with different vendors. I wasn't at a point to bring on staff of, handyman, stuff like that. Don't try to do everything yourself, because then it'll become a problem that you're going to have to clean up later on, and it'll cost you more money. So the big thing I tell a lot of people I know that are starting a business is, hey, you need to go hire a bookkeeper. Don't do it yourself. You're really good at doing property management or roofing or whatever it is you do, but you're not a bookkeeper. Go hire a bookkeeper. Spend the money. It'll cost you, depending on where you're at here, it might cost you a couple $100 a month when you're starting off, because they charge you based the time they work on it, right? So like budget for that and plan for it, because if you try to do it yourself and you can't reconcile your books, and the next thing you know, you're 12 months into it and you got 12 months of unreconciled books, and you're going to go spend thousands of dollars to get them cleaned up. I did that.
Great. Yeah.
I was doing the books myself, like the corporate books. And then eventually after 9 months, I threw my hands up and brought on a bookkeeping firm. And even to this day, it's like less than $500 a month. It's like that makes no sense to have that on staff. Just outsource it.
There's an infinite number of options out there. That's a great point. Outsource things, especially things that there's just a ton of people that are going to do it better for you. That's not going to cost you very much, right? And I would agree with you. I did all my books for the first few years, and I didn't even have the liability you would have as a property manager. Like, books for me at a software company that I was running, like, you know what I mean? Nobody else needed to have their money accounted for. I think in property management, it's a big deal. Like you said, you're going to spend thousands of dollars to like have to clean that up. So I think that's great advice. So is that the first thing that you felt like?
Yeah. So hire a bookkeeper for your corporate books. I'm all about separation of duties and minimizing liability. Get somebody different that's managing your trust accounts.
Okay.
Right. So, I started out, I use Appfolio, and I've been with them since the beginning. Whatever software works best for you, that's fine, as long as it meets, the needs and is scalable, right? The last thing you want them to do is change your management software. And I've talked to people who've changed 2 or 3 times, and that just sounds like an absolute nightmare to me. So get a good software that can accommodate growth. Have somebody checking and doing your monthly reconciliation that's different than your bookkeeper. It's just an additional set of eyes on it, and it can't hurt to have a second set of eyes on it. And it's still cheaper than trying to in-house it all.
So what does that second person look like? Is it just is it a whole nother bookkeeping service, or is it just a part-time person you bring on and just say, spend a couple hours here and there for me?
I use a service. I mean, I don't want to plug too many people for you, but I use OJO, right? They're an ARPM company out there. They manage our trust accounts, right? And I know there's other firms out there that do it. So they're just handling our rent trust, our security deposit. They're checking it. They're doing the monthly reconciliation, make sure everything's balanced. They're, calling out any issues that need to be addressed during the month. And it's a relatively cheap cost, right? And then I use a local bookkeeping firm to manage my corporate books.
No, I think the detail is really important. I think, somebody reading between the lines, I want them to explicitly understand, you've got your MasterKey books, and then you've got the money that you're managing for your owners, and you are willing to outsource both of those and get those done right.
Right. And it's important for the trust account management of the books, that that person knows, or the firm, whoever you use, knows your software, right? So it was important to me to have a firm that knows how to use Appfolio, right?
Yeah.
And it's important that if you have a firm, if you use, Rentvine or Propertyware or Buildium, whoever, that they know how to do it, because otherwise you're going to spend too much time doing tasks for them that they should be able to do, right? I
So
didn't want
it's
to have to train somebody on Appfolio.
yeah. So hire somebody who's got experience with your
Right,
systems, your even property management. I mean, hire someone that knows the industry because it's a unique industry, right? So, I mean,
very.
obviously that's why RentScale exists and we only focus on one industry because you go hire a recruiting firm that doesn't understand property management, it's just going to be a different experience. So I think
Right.
that's a great share as well. But I also kind of picked up there that you were saying you don't want to have to change your property management software. So it sounds like you kind of began with the end in mind, which is a term I always like to use. You knew you were going to grow because I do see these comments on the Facebook groups where they say, "Hey, what's the best property management software for 5 or 10 doors?" And then I see a lot of people say, "Doesn't matter if you have 5 or 10 doors, get the one you want because you don't want to have to move." And it sounds like you've had some experience with that along the way.
Yeah, I mean, Appfolio, for instance, has the 50 door minimum. I paid the 50 door minimum when I didn't have 50 doors because it offered everything I was looking for,
Yeah.
and I knew it was scalable. And I come from a background of IT project management in the software space as well. And you got to have a solution that's scalable, right? Because the last thing you want to
Yeah.
do is a full migration if you go back to the software world, because you've maxed out where you're at in your current solution.
Oh my goodness. I gotta tell you, I get very uncomfortable heart palpitations anytime my team is like, let's change CRMs or let's do this. Cause I know 20 years in business, I've made those changes before. And the cost is never the monetary costs. The cost is all the time that,
Right.
the lost time, the retraining, the not know, like the uncertainty. So I can just really, I can really bond with you over.
Yeah. And whatever you think the cost and the time is going to be, just double it.
Oh, I add a zero.
Yeah.
I don't know if I even double it. When I really think about, if it goes wrong, I mean, that's what I'm saying. If it goes wrong,
Right.
then it's, you're often are unwinding that. So,
Yeah.
okay.
Don't focus on the near term. What can I do for the cheapest?
Yeah.
Right. Because that's not, if you're starting a business, you want it to grow and be successful. And if you're starting out with, oh, how can I do it the cheapest? That's just not the right outlook to take. That to me is you're setting yourself up for future failure.
Yeah. I like that. I like that point because it's like every small business believes and wants to think that they're going to grow, but they're making decisions for exactly where they are today. It's like, I'm like, oh, do you think you're going to grow the company? They're like, definitely. But they're like, do you want to make an investment? Like you're going to be twice the size next year. And they're like, no, definitely not. Like everyone's trying to do just in time investments for their company. But, it's kind of like, imagine if you're going to need 800 or 1,000 square foot of office space. But you're like, but right now I only need 200. And then you're like,
Right.
I'm gonna sign a 5-year lease for 200, even though I'm expecting to grow. And they're like, oh yeah, I guess that doesn't make sense. So it seems like you were always thinking a couple steps ahead.
Yeah. I mean, you know, proactively hire, proactively do whatever instead of reactively. It'll cost you less in the long run. People wait and you see it like on the same Facebook groups. Oh, I'm underwater. I can't keep my head above water. I need to hire someone. I don't have time to train them. That's because you're reactively hiring or you're reactively doing something instead of proactively planning for future growth.
That's great. Do you mind sharing do you have any stories or examples of where you were proactive, where you're like, hey, look, I made these decisions before I necessarily had to, but I was just thinking a couple steps ahead?
Lately it's been with when I brought on my second remote team member, I knew things were going to start being busier. That was the sense of things. So, hey, let's go ahead and get them on board. Let's add on 24/7 call service, right? Because as you grow, you're going to get more phone calls. And I
Yeah.
don't just mean people calling to see houses, it's tenants, it's vendors, it's owners, it's whatever, right?
Hmm.
Um, Inevitably you'll get after hours emergencies or whatever. How are you going to handle that, right? So, and you've got to
Yeah.
look at, it doesn't make sense to just avoid it, right? You just pay. I'm a big fan of outsourcing, right? I come from the world of IT work where you outsource a lot, and some people thought of it as a bad term, but no, it's not really a bad term. It's just an efficient way of doing business, right? All businesses are out there to make money and be profitable for their owners, whether they're individual owners or stockholders, and you have to do what's right. So that bringing on a second assistant PM, if as we keep adding more houses, I'll bring on a third assistant PM and another remote team member, because my idea is I need at least one remote team member for each PM I bring on. And the cost benefits obviously of the remote team members, right? I mean, I'm getting bilingual, highly educated people, and they do great work, and the cost is significantly less. I'm not subject to the payroll taxes and all that. And
True. And they're available. Look out.
Yeah, they're available, and they're
how hard it is to find somebody today stateside. Like nobody's applying for jobs sometimes. It's crazy.
Right. And the turnover is crazy because they don't really know what it is, right? And
yeah,
I mean, I don't even know what it would cost to pay somebody local what I would do for what my remote team members do, and why would they need to be local and sitting in an office here, right?
Sure.
And one of the things I knew going into this was property management companies tend to be slim on their margins. And I believe that because they're way overstaffed. They've got nice big offices, a bunch of staff in there. I pay $325 a month for an office that I pretty much get mail at, and we're never there.
Yeah.
Because why do we need to be in the office? We talk on the phone, we have team meetings several times a week. We should be out in the field managing houses, right? Or if you're a remote team member, you're behind your laptops. It doesn't matter whether I'm sitting at home in the Raleigh area or sitting at a place down at the beach. If I have my laptop, I can still successfully run the business.
That's great. Great share. The fact that you don't have a huge brick and mortar overhead.
I don't even have a window in my office. It's an office. There's a desk and some chairs in there, and we've met in there every once in a while, but we'd rather go out and meet somewhere like, hey, let's go out for a team lunch, or, if we really do need to get together.
Still getting the team together, but you're just picking more favorable environments than an office. Right.
And if we need to go meet somewhere, we can meet in the office. I have gone up to conference rooms. I know some mortgage brokers that have conference rooms, and they're happy to let us use them, places like that. And they're nicer, they have windows or whatever, but it's pretty rare. There's really no need. Really, if the team's getting together, it's for some sort of team building. Hey, let's go have a quarterly lunch or something and just kind of hang out.
And you didn't feel like you needed a big office to grow the company. You feel like owners don't care about that. And maybe it's a benefit because they're like, oh, this is why this guy isn't overcharging me, because I'm not paying for this fancy office that
I've had 2 owners who want to meet in the office in the 8 years.
Yeah.
They all want to meet at the house, right? Or they don't live here, so that they're out of the state and they don't care, right? So if they're local, then our business development manager, she's going to go meet them at the house so she can put eyes on it. It does no good to go meet in the office.
Yeah.
Our office is by appointment only, we tell people.
Yeah. No. A lot of businesses are these days too. Right. That's just, after COVID, that's just so much more common. That's great. This is a really cool, unique thing about property management. As you said, the clients want to meet at a property, not at your office space. So that's a great takeaway. Nobody shared that before as we've done these columns, that, you just don't need a fancy office. You did that from the beginning, but I think a lot of people learn that 4 years into the business, and they're like, their lease comes up for renewal and they're like, do we really need this overhead?
Or they've spent a fortune every month on office space, right? I mean, I worked remote for a number of years as an IT project manager, and companies have been doing that successfully for years. So I think a big reason they brought people back into the office post-COVID, they had the quote return to office, was they were just stuck in these leases they couldn't get out of. So they're like, hey, if we got these leases, we're going to make the people come in, right?
Yeah.
But I think you'll see another shift as those leases come up. They'll just let people go back in a few years.
It's a good insight. We've been we called it location independent before remote was a thing, because, again, I had a marketing agency, and I just realized the best talent I wanted to hire was not in South Florida. And I'm like, man, I've made 3 hires that were not local. And I'm like, I have this office, and we didn't call it remote. And then I just shut the office down, and I had heard this term, location independent, and that's what we called rent scale when we started. But you still, like you with your $300, you still need a physical address to like file corporate returns. It's just you
Yeah,
need
I
an
didn't want it to be my
address.
home address, and
Yeah,
I know Google likes to have a physical address, so
yeah,
and it's cheap enough, right?
yeah.
Three
That's
hundred
what I have
bucks,
as well.
go for it. I call it like a Regis Light. It's a commercial office building that um, these local developers own. They own a number of them where we're at. I think it was originally occupied all by like Merrill Lynch, who moved out. And it's a two-story building, but what's kept the prices down is there's no elevator to the second floor. And they said, we're never putting in an elevator, it costs too much. So
Yeah,
it keeps one big person from
yeah,
going in and renting the whole building out and driving us out or driving our rents up. So there's a bunch of small businesses in there, all kind of, let each other know if packages come, that kind of stuff.
yep.
They provide all the utilities, internet. There's no receptionist or anything. So I call it like a Regis Light.
That's great. I like that. My agency before I shut down was in a two-story small building like that. In fact, time for a story for a different day when we're hanging out, Robert. But the way that I met Jordan from Lead Simple and got in the industry is because my office neighbor met Jordan at the very first PM Grow, and he came over to me because he saw that we did CRM. He's like, "Hey, I need you to meet my friend Jordan." So it's a really funny story that I'll tell you at this point. It's the only reason we're even talking today is because I was in a little building just like you're describing right now. Um,
Right.
Office neighbors are fun. I still stay in touch with a lot of those guys. All right. So what else? I know I went deep on a couple there. Are there other things you want to share? Somebody starting out now?
Um, you know, don't you, I did budget for the expectation to not make a ton of money the first couple of years because you need to put it all back into the business, right?
Mhm.
So I at the time I didn't know about rent scale, right? So I bought Google AdWords for the first year and I got 30, 35 properties. It worked, but it's expensive, right? It was 10 to 15 bucks a click where we're at. I was spending 1,000 to $1,500 a month. So I did that for a year. Um, Take that money, invest in something like a rent scale. You know, I feel like I could have gotten the same return and had maybe even more, right? But I'd also have that business development manager. Don't try to be your own business development manager either. That's a big thing, right? And I know I didn't bring on a business development manager for a few years, but don't try to do it yourself because that's another problem I had, right? I was trying to manage properties, chase leads, follow up on leads for new clients. And it was just, I was dropping the ball on leads, right? And so that's
And doing
when,
the bookkeeping.
yeah, and doing the bookkeeping and like it's impossible, right?
Yeah.
Focus on being a really good business owner and property manager
Yep.
and recognize the other skills that you need to hire for and bring them on, right? Like
Yeah.
I'm not nearly anywhere in the same stratosphere for sales as my business development manager is. She's been doing sales for 20 years in different industries, including this one.
Yeah.
She knows it way better than I can. It's a skill set, right?
Sure.
It's an art form. I'm not in sales. I've never been in sales. So that's another big thing. Like if you want to grow, like get the right people in there to help you grow.
I obviously don't want this to be a commercial for rent scale, but I appreciate you saying that. And I think that one of the lessons that I just share on that is it's like everybody has this idea like when I'm bigger, I'll finally be able to invest in sales and marketing. Like everyone thinks it's like this luxury. Like somehow your company will just grow. And then without sales and marketing, you will then be able to be like, now I can invest in sales and marketing, right? And it's like the opposite. It's like silly when I say it out loud. And I know that I've made that my mistake myself in my business career. And again, I get bootstrapping and I get you got to do stuff, but everybody is like, when I grow, then I'll spend the money to grow. It's a little,
Or I also see countless people who post on social media, hey, how do you grow your property management firm? I want to grow, I'm stuck, I can't grow any higher, but I don't want to spend any money on it.
Mhm.
I'm like, well, you're not going to grow. I mean, that's
Yeah,
the blunt answer is the short answer is you're not going to grow,
yeah.
right?
It's a
And
lot
it's
like I'd love to put the down payment on my next rental property, but I want the rent first. Like if I can start
right,
collecting the rent for the property, then I'll have the money for the down payment, you know?
right.
And
Hey,
we all know that
will you
doesn't
write
work.
me a mortgage loan on a rental with
Yeah,
zero down? I
zero
mean,
down.
it's
Then I'll pay you the down payment later,
right.
like after I've made a couple of years of rent. But when you put it that way, like people start to realize, oh, I get it. It's an investment, and fortune favors the bold, right? It's those
Yeah,
bold
I mean, I've had
mistakes are investments.
private conversations with people who are wanting to grow and tell them bluntly what I spent and told them this is what you have to be prepared to spend, but here's my returns, right? My business has grown this amount from that initial investment. So do the math, right? It's, you're obviously willing to take a risk because you're starting a business, which is very risky in itself. So
Yeah,
don't make that the only risk you're willing to take on.
that's a
There's
great
going to
one.
be other risks. You got to be willing to keep taking risks,
Yeah.
calculated risks, strategic risks. Don't go crazy on stuff, but and don't try to,
That's a great headline for the article, or part of the article is you already took a risk by starting the business. Like, don't stop taking risks. Like, that's
right.
exactly what we do as entrepreneurs. We take risks, that's how we grow.
Owners hire us because they want to mitigate the risks for their property and maximize their return on investment. I tell people this, I'm in a BNI group, and that's one of the things I say. It's like, hey, you hire a property manager to mitigate your risk. We're in a very litigious society.
Yeah, we are.
Regulations are always changing.
Yeah.
You want somebody who knows how to manage a property and within the regulations of that state, because they're all different from a state to state, plus you have federal stuff. They're mitigating your risks, right? And by doing that, it'll eventually lead to maximizing your return on investment, right? Like you'll get tenants there for a long time, you minimize your turnover, everybody's making money, everybody's happy.
Yeah, that's great. It is true. I mean, we are just risk absorbers as business owners. I can't tell you. I mean, we get talked about having the office, and I feel like every time I open mail, I'm getting fined. I have employees in 8 states now, so it's like I'm always getting fined. It's usually pretty trivial. It's like $50 here. So
Yeah.
I didn't file something. I'm just like constantly being fined. And like when I tell that with my more W-2 friends, they're just like, "Oh wow, that's terrible. Like, how do you deal with that?" Like, no, like it's what happens when you're in business.
Yeah. I mean, that's another reason why I don't do my own payroll either. I use a separate
Yeah.
payroll firm, local payroll firm.
We do as
They
well, Robert,
they
but we
handle
still
all that
still seem to
stuff,
be
right?
attracting it.
Like, hey, this letter came, scan it. Hey, you got
Yeah.
this letter, and that's it. I don't have to worry about it. I don't want to try to decipher a letter from the North Carolina Department of Revenue and
Well,
figure
just
out what to
imagine being in
do.
8 states. Trust me, it's
Right. Oh yeah, no, I that seems like a nightmare, right? I'm either going to hire in my state or in another country.
another country. Yeah, I don't disagree. It's fine. I commiserate with this with our friends at Profit Coach and Lead Simple. In there, everyone like, is you guys have a solution? Everyone's like, nope, it's just it is what it is, and you
It
just
is what it is, right?
yeah. Well, great. All right, anything else you want to share?
Yeah, no, I mean, just kind of following on that, don't be afraid to try new things, right? Like, so, sometimes you try and you'll outsource stuff and it doesn't work, and that's okay, right? Like, or maybe it'll work for the short term and then it stops working, but that's okay. Whatever you do doesn't have to last in perpetuity for your business. The goal is, what's the solution? What's the problem you're trying to solve? What's the solution? Does it fix that specific problem? And maybe you have a new problem then, and you just got to pivot and come up with a new solution. That's okay. Like it's okay to have things not work out, right? So,
Yeah.
you can, in the most simplest terms, I had a painter who wanted to, hey, I've got some girls, they want to do cleaning. Can they clean? Yeah, I'll try them out. Tried them out on 3 houses. They didn't meet our standards and say, hey, I'm sorry, it's not working out. Keep painting. You're a great painter, but we're going to use other cleaners. It's okay, right? Don't get,
Yeah.
people get way too emotional on the stuff and they have to take the emotion out. And I know it's hard when you own the business, right? It's the same with, you get these crazy tenant calls or maintenance requests and people get all emotional, and you got to take that emotion out. Try your best. I know it's hard to take emotion out. I get worked up sometimes. Ask my wife who you met, she'll tell you, and she'll brings me back down. But um, everything is a business at the end of the day, right? That you're doing. So whether it's a tenant paying late or you're having to evict a tenant, or unfortunately, if they trash a house, just go look at it like, hey, this is just one problem. What's my solution? How are we going to get over it and get things back on track?
I want to dig on that. This is almost for my own edification, Robert. Like we were talking about how thick my skin is around not thick, but how sensitive I am to wanting to change a CRM or make a major change. And that's because I did it, and I got the scar tissue. I did it like 4 or 5 times, and I like learned, which I think is good. I think it's good to learn the wisdom, right? Wisdom is hard
Mhm.
earned. But I love what you're also saying, which is like so many business owners that I'm friends with, I see get stuck because they want 100% success rate. They're like so afraid to try a new thing and it not work out. And then they're like, see, I shouldn't be taking risks with my business. So that's a question for you. Like, how do you balance those lessons that you learn, that you believe are actually really valuable? And then how do you continue to be like, it's okay. We tried a new cleaning company and they completely like wasted a bunch of money, whatever. I'm back to the next one. Like, how do you balance that dichotomy? And that's like a real question that I've always wondered about.
Right. I mean, it's almost like an investment, right? Some investments work out, some don't, right? Um, Cleaning company, they clean
But
through
you keep
houses
investing, right?
and it
Like,
didn't work. And so, yeah, I'm going to go spend money out of pocket. I'm not going to charge the owners a second time for a cleaner because the cleaner we picked didn't work out. So,
yeah,
yeah, I'm going to eat money on that deal. But at the end of the day, I was taking a risk to see if it worked well for my business. And sometimes they work out, sometimes they don't. But look at your most successful companies. They'll all have had failures at some point, right? And they keep investing and keep trying, keep growing. Even at,
yeah,
Amazons or Apples and Meta, right? Like everybody loves to hate on Facebook, but they're doing something right, right? Because people are still
yeah,
on there and uh, they've changed things over the years, but people still stick with them. They just try again.
yeah.
And it's just,
People that love Apple forget about the Newton. You and I are old enough to remember. Do you remember the Newton? It was like the original iPad, and then it was
yeah,
a giant flop. And then 10 years later, I mean, look. I just saw the earnings. I'm a big Apple investor, and I just saw that like iPad specifically earnings like crushed expectations like that. I mean, they're making billions of dollars a quarter on this product that they totally failed at, and then they came back 10 years later. So I think it's a great example. Just you gotta have some thick skin when it comes to those failures and keep innovating.
yeah. I mean, it's totally okay. Like it's not the end of the world, right? I mean,
Yeah.
as long as you're going into whatever decision it is you're going to make with some level of calculation, like, hey, why am I doing this? What's
Yep.
it going to cost? What's the benefit I can realize out of this?
Yeah.
And, you know, yes, sometimes it just doesn't work out and that's the way it is. And then you just try again. But, obviously don't take a risk that if it doesn't work out, it like shuts your whole business down. But, be willing to take those risks because that's how you're going to
Yeah.
grow, right? I spent money going back to the BDM phase, right? Like, hey, this is either going to be like a side hustle for me or I'm going all in, right?
Mhm.
And I knew what I could get if it's all in, but I knew what I had to spend. So I'm like, if I spend this and get, X plus whatever, seems like a pretty good investment to me.
I agree.
So,
Was
I mean, look at any company, right? Whether it's a property management company or um, a software company or whatever type of company, they all have sales, business development people, right? I dealt with them as a project manager for years. That's the only way to grow, right? Me as the project manager, I'm not doing sales. The directors of the company, they're not doing sales. They're hiring people to do sales, right?
Mhm.
And I'm not just trying to do a shameless plug for y'all, but it's the reality of any business, right? You go into a business to grow it and make as much money as you can, right? People ask what my number is. I don't have a number. I want to just keep growing and keep making more money. Why not?
Great.
Find a successful business that has a number that says, oh, when I hit this amount of revenue, I'm just going to plateau. They're
Yeah,
not going to be a successful business.
I completely agree. And as we've all learned in our recent memory, a dollar in 2024 isn't what it was worth in 2020. And you know what I mean? Like whatever our number was,
No.
it's probably got to be reassessed, right? So
And there's so much regulation out there that it's important to have a good property manager who knows what they're doing. To go back onto that, like uh, Keith Becker, if you met him, he's out of California.
upkeep.
He's
Yep.
Yep, he's great. He likes to say, "Hey, I don't mind regulation. The more regulation, that just means there's more business for us as property managers because individual self-managed people won't be able to do it anymore." because they won't be able to keep up with the regulations, or they won't know how to manage the regulations. And it's a really good point. People get worked up over regulations. I can't do this, can't do that. How do you learn how to adhere to them and make money off them? Like, that's your pitch. Hey, I can do this successfully, self-managed mom and pop landlord. Turn it over to us. We'll make you money. We'll make you more money.
Yeah, that's a great point. More and more, a professional property manager is worth their weight in gold. There's a joke I've made before at dinners at NARPM events where it's like, the biggest conspiracy in history is that who makes the laws in America? Lawyers. Like, all the lawyers turn into congressmen. None of the lawyers are ever being like, we need less laws. Like, they're never saying that. They're like, so at the same point, it's like more regulation, more rules, right? Because like that's what they get paid to do, is to enforce that. And for so I just always laugh. I'm like, it's just like no attorneys are getting together and saying, we've got way too many laws on the books. Let's wind them back. They're never going to
They're
do
all lawyers, right?
Yeah, exactly.
That's another good piece of advice there. Like, get yourself a good attorney, right? And inevitably in this industry, you'll need them, right? Not that you're going to be sued, but you're going to have stuff that you're not qualified to answer or respond to.
Yeah.
And as we've grown, and I have a local firm that I work with, and they're great because I can just reach out to them. And yes, there is an overhead cost to it, but I'm also, again, mitigating my risk. I don't want to respond with something incorrectly that gets me in trouble. I may take a situation where I have an attorney respond, and then that way they know the response is correct, right? I have a firm I work with, they're a small business. They're like a transactional business type firm, right? They're not doing litigation, but they also have attorneys and an attorney on staff that I work with that specializes in real estate and landlord tenant type issues as well. So it's great.
Yeah.
I can just call him in if I need to. So don't be afraid to go have a relationship with a firm, even if you don't need them right away. Go introduce yourself, meet them, set up some time. Hey, I'm a small business. I just, here's my industry. I'm doing property manager. I don't have anything right now, but I want to build a relationship in case I do need someone. Also, what that does is you're then in their system, right? So so if you have a tenant reach out to them, there's a conflict of interest, and I'm sorry, tenant, I already talked to property manager here, so I can't help you.
That was great advice, Robert. That whole attorney-client privilege, and conflict of interest clause is, get the best real estate attorneys on your team.
Yeah.
You're not only using
our business is trademarked,
yeah,
and we actually had to go out. We've gone after people who started pretty much the exact same name in our state.
Yeah.
And forced them to change their names. You have to protect your business, right? Whether it's through whatever transactions are going on or just the overall business, right? You've worked really hard to start your business, so protect it.
Yes, that's been a big journey of mine in business maturity. I mean, I've been in business since my 20s, and I'm not surprised in my 20s. I can research everything on Google. I don't need an attorney. Now, I'm like, what I've actually done that's worked well for me is I found an attorney friend that I've used for a ton of work, actually, who introduced me to Jordan, to Full Cycle. He was like my office neighbor. I've used him for everything, my prenup, every time I close on a property, they're real estate attorneys. You may know those guys because they're big in the industry. But my hack is he knows every attorney knows every other attorney. So rather than going back to Google when he's like, hey, we don't do that kind of law, I pick up the phone, I call Jaron, and I said, who do you know that does X? And they love to refer their friends to you. And then you get priority service. You know that they're going to be as good as they are. I mean, for the most part, you know what I mean? And so this is part of our business development training is get attorneys in your network. But I think as a business owner, get a great attorney that gets you and that you respect, and they'll open the doors to every other kind of attorney you need. And I don't think anybody ever talks about that, but it's worked really well for me.
Yeah, no, it's super important. And a lot of people don't have an attorney, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I set my own LLCs up myself, so it's fine. But a lot of people use an attorney to set it up. But even if you set it up yourself, go meet one and get one.
Yeah,
hopefully you don't need them anytime soon, but
the
time will come where you will, and you'll need that relationship. So because that way you'll get a quicker response, and time can be of the essence in some of these cases.
I still do set up all my LLCs, and You use a,
I
well,
have, yeah.
now
I
I
mean,
have,
it's in North Carolina, it's simple, right? I mean, I
yeah,
can do it
exactly.
online and pay the few $100, and
Yeah.
it's totally simple to set up an LLC.
But just
But
basic business agreements or getting a lease reviewed, you know what I mean?
yeah,
Like we all have
addendums, we
opportunities.
all need addendum, custom
Yep.
addendums now. I had
Just,
one where it took on a house with a hot tub for the first time, and he wrote up a pool and hot tub addendum, right? Because
yeah.
I was like, look, I don't want to be liable. Owner doesn't want to be liable. The standard lease forms give like one or two sentences around that. Like, we need something to protect us.
Smart.
2-page form, right? It's worth 600-700 bucks.
I would say a couple
Easy.
$100, 600
Yeah,
bucks,
easy,
and
right?
you'll be using it for 10 years probably, right?
Yeah, and he can modify it based on the situation very easily, the way it's
Yeah,
worded.
that's great. All right, well, I'm in a chatty Kathy because you've been saying great stuff. Is there anything else on your list that you didn't get to share yet?
Um, get good insurance. I'm a big fan of, I don't buy insurance based on price, I buy it on coverage. And I know that's rare just in society in general. But you want your insurance to be there for you when you need it, if you need it, whether it's your personal insurance or your business insurance, you know, get good insurance, get a good business liability umbrella. We're all paying and transacting electronically. You better go get cyber insurance. I mean, you hear about places getting hacked all the time.
Yep.
And if you're transacting hundreds of thousands of dollars every month, which, firms, if you're managing 3, 4, 5, 600 houses, you are, get a
Yeah.
good cyber policy to protect you. Don't be
Oh,
afraid to
yeah.
cover yourself because, if somebody somehow got in and hacked all your monthly owner payments, would you, if you didn't have that, be able to cover it? I wouldn't be able to.
No, that sounds pretty catastrophic, to be honest with you.
Yeah, so that cyber insurance is worth its weight in gold.
Yeah.
And get a good insurance broker. And don't just go Google online and find whoever's cheapest. Like, find a good local independent agent who has primarily does a lot of their work with businesses. The firm I use is actually out of the Denver area.
Hmm.
They do business and personal, primarily business, but they do all my personal. I have one agent who does all my personal and a different agent does all my business because their agents are, subject matter experts in either business or commercial.
I
And
have
they
a
do my life
parallel, I
insurance.
have a
So
parallel situation. One guy that does
yeah, they know all
everything
the
personal, and
industry
one guy that does
changes.
everything. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, they know what they're bringing up things that I hadn't even thought about, and you hope you never need them. But yeah, I mean, I want to be covered. I don't want to have some issue that becomes catastrophic and puts me out of business.
Great. That was great. Great share. But again, nobody had really brought up yet. It's the less sexy side of experience, but I
It's
do.
an overhead. I get it. Nobody likes it.
Well, I mean, but okay, I can definitely complain that like my Florida property insurances have like tripled in the last like 4 years. But other than that, my car insurance, like they just seem like the best deal in the world. Like it's a couple hundred
Yeah.
dollars to prevent you from going out of business or losing net worth. You know what I mean? They're like it's like a little fraction of an investment to protect against a giant catastrophic upside. So,
Yeah. I
I
mean, I've
mean,
got the agent, they're looking at it. They're not, emboldened with one carrier because they're an independent agent. So they're
yeah,
looking at it every year at renewal, like, hey, is this still the best for my client? Right. Or are there better options out there that are good, reliable carriers because we have experience with them? Right.
sure.
There's some insurance carriers out there in the property management space that I'm told are horrible about paying out claims. So yeah,
Easy
I'd
enough.
rather pay a little more and not deal with that.
Agreed.
So it's just like the personal insurance I deal with. I have a friend who runs a Service Master um, water and fire restoration
Yeah,
outfit we're at, and he knows which insurances are good about paying and which aren't, right? I mean, because
that's
he
a good
deals with them
contact.
every single day, right? Like some of your big captive firms, like your State Farms and your All States,
Yeah.
they're getting very stingy, and part of that is because they're bleeding cash, right? So
Yeah. You're right. Doesn't matter if you're saving $40 or $400 a month. If they don't pay when you need it, it was all a bad decision, right?
right.
So,
And if you want to minimize some of that expense, another shameless plug, there's banks out there that, you know, you can earn
we'll
credits
cover
on
that.
your deposits and
Yep.
they're paying all my insurance.
Yeah.
So
Well,
it's really not
we
an
can say that in
overhead
the
anymore.
video because we love Enterprise Bank and we know they do
Yeah,
that.
we do love enterprise, right?
Yeah.
So they pay all my insurance with my credits because as
Yep.
property managers, we have a lot of money sitting in accounts that's pretty
Yeah.
static with security deposits. And while we're not getting the interest off of them, we're getting these credits that we use. I use it
Yeah.
for my folio bill. I use it for all my insurance. A lot of times your insurance companies will do premium audits, right? Based on, especially for companies like ours that are growing, they want to, because they'll see each year your revenue is growing. Well, let's do a premium audit and see where you were. And I just got a bill for $5,000 the other day from a premium audit, 5,000 bucks. Sent it over to Enterprise and they had them a check within a week from a
I think
credit.
you just like it was a perfect tie back to another lesson you shared, which is work with vendors that get your business, right? Like work with
Right.
like you were saying that, and I was piling on because I know that's what we do at Rent Scale. But like, yeah, when you work with a vendor that really knows your business and knows their craft, like the synergies are kind of multiplied, compared to if you just called Chase and you were
I
like,
started out with Bank of America and they could care less of who I was.
yeah, yeah, exactly.
And I started out with them because they're a big bank. Everybody knows them. They're right across the street from my office, but
We all do.
I could not walk in there and they would have who I am. I
Yeah,
can send an email to Jeremy Jones at Enterprise and he knows exactly who I am. I
me
see
too.
him at
Yeah,
conferences and he knows who I am, right? They know our business.
yeah.
So we're not just a number to them.
It is great. I've never had a banker before. We actually do business with Enterprise, even though
Yeah.
we're not getting the analysis credits and all those other things. But we're just like, hey, all our clients, and we were like, why not? And Jordan suggested we do that, and I love those guys. And you're right. I got line of credit person that I talk to if I ever need anything. Like I got people that literally, are in an email history with me, and I don't have to like walk into a branch and be like, oh, you've only been here for 9 days. Like, let me explain my history with you.
Yeah.
It is nice.
With my premium audit check, like I got a phone call last week or maybe the beginning of this week from someone at Enterprise. Hey, I just wanted to follow up, make sure they got that check and everything was okay. You tell me one big bank that would do that unless you had like 9 figures in assets sitting in there and they
Yeah,
still wouldn't do it.
probably 10 figures. Yeah,
Right.
exactly. Wow. Yeah, that's great. They're, I mean, I just think that's a great lesson is like find people that get your business and that know how to protect your business, right? I mean, that's worth a lot
Right.
versus just looking at like you said, you're buying insurance based on the coverage instead of the premium. I mean, value is not what you're paying always, That's the pitch for property management.
I mean, I've had claims at houses from water leaks or whatever that should have been open and shut claims, and the owner had some cheap insurance policy that they got through their work or whatever, and they ended up 16, 17 grand out of pocket. And, the mitigation company's like, I cannot believe they didn't cover this. This is a clear case of
Damage.
sudden and accidental damage. Like it should have been covered. And the owner's having to refinish hardwood floors on the entire first floor out of pocket and still didn't switch carriers,
Still
which
didn't.
is just baffling to me. I guess they figure, well, it's cheap enough and I only have one claim every 10 years or blah, blah,
Yeah.
blah. And I'm like, what if the house burns down and they don't
Yeah.
cover you, right? Or they cover you based on some depreciated amount of the original construction versus actual replacement costs.
I moved just out of principle at that point that they wouldn't pay that.
Oh yeah, I would too.
Yeah. All right. Well, I know we're getting close to our time. Anything else you didn't get to share?
No, just wish me luck at the DMV today. I'm taking a 15-year-old over there to get her permit test. So
Exciting.
we're expecting to spend hours in line because it's crazy here. And like,
No
well,
appointment
charge
or
your phone
anything?
and bring a hotspot.
Do you have an appointment? Or are you just walking in?
Appointments are like 90 days out.
Oh, there you
So
go. I've
everyone
heard
does.
that.
Luckily, we're in a smaller town here. There's a couple of DMVs within about 45 minutes of each other. So I'm going to
Yeah.
try to do walk-ins at one. And if they aren't taking walk-ins, I'll go to the other that through some Facebook groups have said, yeah, they're taking walk-ins for sure. But it could be anywhere from 30 minutes to 3 hours. So
I get it.
charge the
Well,
laptop, charge the
it is a
hotspot for the phone,
Friday.
and
Yeah, it is a
yeah.
Friday, which I don't think bodes well for you because everyone's probably like trying to get there.
Well, we went into one yesterday driving down. We got there at 4 o'clock. I scanned the QR code, and this is totally me, but it had been a long day. I'll say that. because I left to come down here and left my laptop at home, had to turn around an hour out and
Ah,
go back and get it.
ah,
So we stop at this DMV, scan the QR code. I get a number, which I think is my number in line. And after like 25 minutes, I'm like, I'm not seeing my number. So I go up and ask them. They're like, oh, you have to then text that number to this other number to get your queue number. And I'm like, well, see, I did it at like 4:05. And she's like, well, it's too late now. It's 4:35. We won't be able to see you. And I was like, there's nothing you can do. And she's like, nope. I'm like,
that's ridiculous. Wow. What a terrible system.
but I mean, the DMVs in general never have a reputation for being efficient, right?
This is true. This is very true. Yeah, but
And then if you don't have a phone, you're supposed to go up to the this one specific counter and get a number that nobody's ever at. I'm like, what if you don't have a phone? Because like some senior citizens don't have phones.
yeah, less common, but yes, you're absolutely right to be a
Yeah.
public service like that and not be able to do that. But yeah, it sounds like they got some.
It's a state agency. What can you do? You just got to
some IT
roll with the
things figured out.
punches.
Yeah. Well, I remember being 15, getting my driver's permit. It was a very exciting time. So I wish her. It's your daughter. Is that what you said?
Yep.
Wish her
Yeah.
luck. Hopefully she
She
gets
was
it.
more concerned about how she looked for the picture
Of course.
than the actual test.
Of course she was. Yeah.
I was like, I think they printed on paper. It's a permit, like it's black and white.
Yeah. Yeah, it's true. It's not like, it's not like the full license she'll be carrying around
Right.
for years. So, but I love it that she was worried about that.
Yeah.
So, do you have any filters that I can pick from? You know, like
Right.
that.
Can I pose?
Yeah, exactly. I'm just gonna download this one from TikTok and let you use it. Okay.
Yeah, that's right. Snapchat. Let me snap you a picture.
Yeah. Well, Robert, I really appreciate it. This has been awesome.
Yeah.
Thanks for sharing all the wisdom. You shared some really good ones today that like reminded me of things I kind of wish I knew or I learned the hard way that I hadn't heard anybody else say. So,
Well, I'm glad. I hope I help out. I hope some people who are just starting out or have recently started or about to, like, listen, right? Take heed, right? Like,
Yeah.
just don't try to do everything yourself. Focus on being an excellent property manager and surrounding yourself with solid vendors and people that will help you grow your business and be successful.